again from 6S1 for CG Bytes with our Content Artist Development Program, and doing another quick tips video for the end of the year as we closed out the weekly seminars and move into 2017, when we're going to be changing the program up a bit, going to bi-weekly seminars for the public, and then bi-weekly seminars on the alternating weeks for folks who sell content at CG Bytes. So today I'm working on a conversion, taking one of my older figures, a creature that was originally for Poser, and bringing it into Daz Studio. And in the course of working on that, I thought it would be kind of handy to show some folks some things about converting from Poser to Daz Studio. So here I've already got the figure brought in. The initial thing that you want to look at in doing a conversion is going to be the actual skin weights and how you choose to interpret that from Poser into Daz Studio. So the first thing that you want to do if you're doing a conversion, and this is a really good thing to keep in mind if you're wanting to do products that are for both Poser and Daz Studio, then the way I would tend to work is probably going to start in, well, for a long time would have started in Poser. Now it's hard to say. Now Daz Studio has some really cool tools in it for content development, so it's really, you can really start in either one. But if you started in Poser, the way that I would convert your content into Daz Studio would be in Daz Studio in your library window, go down to where it says Poser Formats, and then you right click and hit Add a Runtime. And there you can go select the runtime that you want. Here I've selected the Senshu Kami Ippon. That is the figure that I'm going to be converting. And then you'll see that it shows up in a way that's very similar to the way your libraries work inside Poser. So here I have, I'm actually bringing in a copy of it that I made a few little alterations to, just to update the figure. But once you bring it in, you load it in, and initially it's going to look, it's going to work pretty well. It's going to work very similarly to the way it functions inside Poser. But once you have it, you're going to need to switch it over to the newer skin weight model that is, that is kind of the core of Daz Studio. So to do that, let's go to Edit, Figure, Rigging, and then we'll go to Convert Figure to Weight Mapping. Okay, and you have two choices here. You have Triax or General. Triax is going to give you a separate weight for each rotation of a joint, and that will probably give you the most direct conversion from the old Poser parametric rigging into the skin weight rigging of Daz Studio. However, it is literally 3 times as difficult to edit your skin weights with Triax. I'm not a big fan of the Triax method for the simple fact that it really is a whole lot harder to work with. It's a lot more to, I mean, in a way you get more granular detail. You can do some really cool things with it that are unique to the Triax system and unique to Daz Studio, because I don't know anything else that uses a multi-weight system like that. However, the instances where you'll need, or you might want to have multiple skin weights on a joint like that are so rare that I prefer general weight mapping for everything. And that's much closer. If you're someone coming into this like I do from Maya, Max, other programs, the general weight mapping function is going to be much more similar to what you're used to. So we'll hit that, and we'll give it a second, and then you'll see that it converts all of those parametric weights into the general weight map. And of course, once it does that, it's no conversion, nothing automated is ever perfect. So then the next big step is going to be editing your skin weights. So let's delete this guy out and bring back over the one that I was working with. Okay. So let's just bring this guy back over. And we'll do a little bit of just a little walkthrough here, looking at some of these joints. And a lot of the stuff is probably going to be pretty close right off, just working from the parametric system of Poser. Here's a spot. Here's a spot to really keep in mind. Is around knees, tight bend, areas of tight bending like that. So I'm going to go into my skin weight brush. And also here you can see that when it translated from the parametric weights into skin weights, sometimes it can do some really odd things. So we want to look at those kind of issues and make sure that we work out any of the bugs that come from that sort of thing. So I want to go in right now to my geometry editor, and I'm just going to select a few polys. This is a nifty way. If you have a lot of groups in your object, if you select a few polys, then you'll see in the little plus column over here, you'll see it kind of grayed out for groups that you have polys selected in. So I like that because just the way my eyes work, I guess, I can spot that much faster than reading through all of the different group names. So let's go find that little guy, and then I will just add that entire group to my selection. Now if I hold Control and the plus sign, hit the plus key while holding Control a couple times, we can expand that selection up, or if we hit the minus sign, we can retract how much we have selected. And now I'll go back to my skin weight tool, the node weight map brush. It's kind of a long name for it. I just call it skin weight tool. And then if I right click and go to weight editing, smooth selected, and you can change these, play with these settings. Right now I'm keeping mine around 25% and 20 iterations. So we hit that. Now you can see how that smooths that weight out quite a bit. Then I'm just going to expand my geometry selection and make sure that I have this little area, this little horn sticking off as barb. I want to make sure I have that 100% weighted to that shin bone so that it stays nice and rigid. Okay? And while you're in the weight map brush, at any point you can right click over an area and select that joint. So you don't have to keep going through menus all the time just to get to what you need. And you'll notice too, right now it's only affecting the weights for polygons I have selected. That's because I have respect selection turned on in my skin weight tool. So I want to take a quick look at some of my rotation. And this is just kind of the broad strokes of a conversion. A quick look at really the most fundamental aspects of both a conversion, and really it's at the core of doing original figures at all. So here I'm just going to do a little bit of rotating of this joint, see how it deforms. And one gripe that I have with Daz Studio is quite often the skin weight mirroring doesn't quite work right. But we're going to try anyway. I'm going to set up the symmetry on this pose. There we go. We're going to cast that symmetry across the other side, and then I'll right click and go to weight editing, weight map symmetry. And yeah, there, see, it didn't really do much. So I'm going to need to go over and manually do basically the same sort of thing. And if you're using a command like smoothing and you use the same command, you'll get pretty close to the same results from one side to the other. So that's something I find kind of clunky, but it's a small price to pay for what you can get out of skin weights. So let's just go back to our skin weight tool, weight editing, smooth selected. Okay. And then I can see that on both sides I want to do a little bit of smoothing in the back of that joint. let's also expand and then contract that selection so that I can make sure I get all of the barb on this side weighted properly. Here's a nifty selection trick in Daz Studio. If you, in the geometry editor, paint a selection of 2 polygons, and then you hold Control and hit the plus sign next to your backspace key, not on your number pad, but the plus equal sign next to the backspace key, then that will select that edge loop, and then we can expand our selection out from there. And we're then going to contract that a bit. Now let's grab this joint, and I'm using mostly smoothing, and I'm doing that by holding the Control key while I paint. Okay. And I'm just trying to make sure that I have things as similar as possible across the figure. So I'm pretty comfortable with what I've gotten so far here. So let's move on down and do the next joint down. So it's going to be this left ankle, and we're going to want to add some weight. Of course, you want to pay attention to things that are fleshy, anatomical areas that that should get some compression in the way they move. Okay. So there's that. You have to make sure you have 2 polys selected for that little edge loop trick to work. Paint in some more weight over here. And at any point that I'm working and I need to zoom in on what I'm working on, if I hit Control F, it's like hitting this little focus command right here. So Control F will focus and set your camera so that it's pivoting around whatever's selected, which I find really, really handy while I'm working on skin weights. That's not bad. Okay, so that's a quick look at editing skin weights in a conversion or an original figure creation. Another thing to keep in mind is you want, like in Poser, the way the dials work, it's not as sensitive. It doesn't tend to be as sensitive as in Daz Studio. So in Daz Studio, if you don't have limits set up on something, and I grab bend, well, not only will it swing all the way around, but it will move to really crazy high values very quickly. So we want to make sure that we set our limits. I've often had discussions with people about limits on figures. As an animator, a lot of times I don't like having limits on things, or I will like my limits to be very general and really kind of on the absolute outskirts of what something should do, because I like exaggerating things a little in animation. I like to be able to break the pose a little. There are good reasons for that. There's things that your eye looks for in movement that when you animate something, if you don't have little bits of squash and stretch, which really can be emulated a lot of times by it's called joint breaking quite often. If you don't have the ability to move things a little past where they should go, a little into the hyper-extended range, then when, let's say you're doing a walk and the hands are swinging at the sides and the hand goes all the way to the rear, if it just goes back and stops and can't hyperextend just a little in that apex frame of its movement, then it's going to feel off. It's going to feel stiff. So I've always kind of had a love-hate relationship with setting limits on things. I tend not to set limits on things in my rigs inside like Maya for a lot of reasons. I will set them very broadly. So anyway, in Poser, that's never really been a big concern to me because the way that you interacted with the controllers in there had a kind of a low sensitivity, so you didn't get really crazy values all that easily from my experience. Whereas in Daz Studio you do. All that to say, in Daz Studio you want to set limits up on things, and that can be a bit of a headache at first. When you first look at it and think, oh my god, I have all these joints, and then you go in and set up limits on all this stuff. But there are some tricks to this, and I'm going to show you at least a glimpse of that. There's actually a lot of little tricks I've discovered for doing a lot of editing inside Daz Studio across many body parts all at once. I'm going to show you a little bit of that and encourage you to dig deep into exploring that, because there are ways that it applies. There's just a lot of cool stuff you can do. So anyway, let's go ahead and look at that. Let's take, for instance, these legs. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set some general limits that are kind of on, I know they're going to be out of bounds, but they're at least going to let me lock my sliders, my dials here, into some place where I can move things and not get those crazy large numbers. So the way I'm going to do that, if you come into your scene view, okay, if we take the pointer tool and we control click, we could select both thighs on this guy. And then inside the scene view, we could right click and hit select children. And you'll see that I have a key command set up for this. I use this all the time. I set up a key command in my my preferences, which if you watch our weekly seminars, then you probably will see or have seen where I showed in 1 week how to set up stuff like that, like custom key commands and some of the stuff that I use. So I'm selecting all the children of the thighs, and once you have those selected, you'll see in your parameters tab those all show up like so. And then if we click on any of them and then hold shift and select, or we can control click and select multiples that way. But if I select all of these, you'll see it puts a number in front of anything that is a shared attribute, meaning there are 14 body parts here selected, and all of them have a bend dial. All of them have a twist. All of them have a side to side. Now, if the joint rotation orders are different, because let's say bend on a thigh will cause the thigh to go forward and back. That's an x-axis rotation. Bend on a shoulder is going to be a z-axis rotation. It's actually one of the reasons I don't like that we have this habit of giving things pretty names. I would actually prefer all the joints in figures to be named X rotate, Y rotate, Z rotate. I despise these names of bend, twist, and side to side, because the way a shoulder bends is not the way a thigh bends, and so it could be confusing from a technical standpoint, because I'm thinking, okay, X rotation, it's going around this axis. That's literally what's going on. So anyway, this program, Daz Studio, also is, it's literal. So if you have 14, here we have 14 different joints selected, and fortunately here they're all of the same orientation, so their rotations are all the same. But if we were to add, let's say, let's control click and add the shoulder. Now you'll see we have some of these show up highlighted in red. that's letting you know that there are joints selected who have different joint rotation orders. And so when you try to edit the way that I'm showing you right now, when you try to edit multiple things at once that way, it may not work, or you may get some strange results. So whenever you see that, that's when you know, oh, wait, something along the way, it has a different rotation. So I'll just deselect that shoulder. Actually, let's just make the whole selection again. There we go. So here I know that we all have, everything here has all the same rotation order. They share names, so we have 14 different bend parameters, 14 different twists, and so on. So now we can edit all of those at once. If we click on this gear, we can actually deep edit all of that. So we get access to all of our limits. We can turn on and off all kinds of things. It's really, really cool. So like right here, if I wanted to make a correction or a change to where all of them are called bend, and I've written it, in the original poser file, it was lowercase. Let's change that to an uppercase. And that's going to change it for all 14 of those joints at once. That's incredibly handy. So there's that. Then I'm going to set those limits like I was talking about. Oh, pardon me just a second. My microphone is trying to slip and drop on me there. So I'm going to start out with a value of -90 and 90. Okay, of course that's in degrees. So -90 and 90. So now if I reselect all that, I'll see we have capital B bend. And everything is -90 and 90. Then I'm going to right click, go to limits, and hit enable limits, and make sure that limits are turned on for that parameter on all those joints. Now obviously 90 degrees is a bit extreme for some of those joints. That's okay. That's setting a very broad value so that our slider will actually stop somewhere, and it makes it easier to work with. If we don't, let's take for instance the twist value doesn't have anything set. Well, that we can end up dragging that to ridiculous values, and it becomes a little strange to try and figure out exactly where you're going with things. So from here, I'm going to go then to shared joints, and it's nice looking at legs, looking at when you look at things that have these shared rotation orders, right? Right now, I know that my X rotate or bend on these thighs is going to need the same limits. So I can go into those. Okay, let's look. Actually, -90 to the front is not bad. -90 to the back is a bit extreme. So let's take that. Let's look for what our rear bending, where we want that to stop. Okay, let's make that 40. So now I'm going to edit both of these at once and set them to 40. So now we have our limits set on the X rotations of those thighs. Okay. So now twisting, however, is going to be different, because the twist on this is going to go the opposite direction. So almost every instance, I can't think of any time where it would be different, that you have joints that are symmetrical. Okay, you're going to have one rotation that they share. So in the case of the legs, it's the X rotation. So if you think about it, X being our lateral axis in 3 dimensions, that X axis is going to be the shared rotation. Their values are going to be the same on that axis. Whereas the twist, which is a Y rotation, they're going to have opposing values. And on Z, they're going to have opposing values if they mirror each other. So when this joint moves that way on the Z axis, if I were to mirror that, okay, here we see we have a value of 58. Here it's going to be -58. So we have to keep in mind that whatever we enter into these, we can't do all at once and have it mirrored, because those values actually are different. They're going to be the opposite of each other. So what I'll do is I'll look at my left side first. I tend to work left to right on everything. So I'll go to my left side. I'm going to set limits on the side assign value. And then I'm just going to set this to a value of 72. And then we'll give it a negative, I'm going to guess and say 30. It's not bad. So if on my left side it was negative 30 to 72, on my right side it's going to be negative 72 to 30. And I really, really wish that in Daz Studio there was a way to have it mirror those values across. I know that in Poser, and this is actually one good reason to do at least some basic setup in Poser in advance, is that in Poser you can, when you transfer symmetry from one side to the other, it carries over the those parameter settings. So if you have that stuff already set up in Poser and you mirror it there, then when you save that figure out, that will be set up. So when you bring that into Daz Studio, those values should already be in place. But if you're working out of Daz Studio strictly, which is kind of where I'm heading to, because in spite of some of those little things that I still really like in Poser and wish Daz Studio had, there's so much here that's so much more powerful now that I'm kind of gravitating more to DS. So if you're working in DS, though, this is something to keep in mind, that you don't really have a way right off to transfer that stuff. And I'm talking with a couple of different guys about having them help me write some scripts that might alleviate that problem. And that's something that, if or when that becomes available, I'll make sure that that you folks have access to it, because that would be such a cool thing. I want that so badly. So anyway, but for now, you have to go in and kind of think through those opposing values and go, okay, this side's positive, this side's negative. So that's kind of the gist of editing your joints and limits for a figure conversion or an original figure. That is absolutely the basic intro level. There's a lot more stuff that we can get into beyond that. But that is enough to kind of get you started. Like if you have a favorite creature or a model of some sort that you've had sitting around for a long time in a Poser library, but you want to move it into Daz Studio, well, right there is kind of the beginning. That's kind of a quick way to do that. Now, another thing that you can do is just bring the stuff into Daz Studio and let it read that Poser rigging, run with that. You can probably just do nice artwork with that. But you might want to use it in its native Poser format, but still have iRay material setups on it. To change those material setups to iRay, like here, this guy coming in out of Poser, he has the default 3D light setup that's going to be on anything that comes over. So what I'll do is I'll go into the Surfaces tab, and I'm just going to hold Shift, click, and then select all of these. And then if we go into our content library, go to My Daz 3D Library, then let's see if we can find this. Where's it at? Where's that? Shader presets. There we go. My Daz 3D Library. Go down to Shader presets. Then go down to iRay. And inside iRay, you'll see a folder called Daz Uber. So from there, I would just double click on the iRay Uber base, and that's going to convert all of this over to being an iRay material. And just a pet peeve, a lot of people want to say iRay texture. Textures and materials are two completely different things. A material is what defines how your render engine interprets the surface, how it interprets how light interacts with the surface. That's what a material is. A texture is an image map. Period. That's all. A texture is whatever image is shoved into a channel to do whatever it'll do there. So these are different things. You know, when someone says an iRay texture, I'm like, that always kind of makes me groan a little. So what we're doing here is converting this to iRay materials. And materials. So once you've converted those, then if you didn't want to go through a full figure conversion and save the whole figure and all that stuff out, then from there you could just save a material setup somewhere, wherever you like to save those sort of things just for your own use. You could save that stuff out that way and then just reapply it whenever you bring the figure in out of the poser runtime. Though I would encourage you to maybe go the few extra steps of doing a full poser to Daz Studio conversion, because there's some real benefits to having it moved forward into the skin weight format. So the next thing that I would do with my material conversion, and I hope this will play nice right now, is I would take my viewport and set it to the interactive iRay setting. And I like to work from an HDR setup, so that I have kind of an environment and some natural lighting cast into the scene. So I have a number of those saved for myself. So let's go, where do I have those? Where do I have those? Let's see. Shaders, render presets. So let's grab this guy. And this is made from a free HDRI image. I've actually been using this for some of my promo shots lately on some of these monsters, and really happy with the way this works. I'll probably do a dedicated video sometime soon just on setting these up. Now you'll notice here with my HDRI, I do have a lot of light present in the scene, a lot more than I really want, and it makes it hard for me to tell what's going on. There's a quick, easy way to fix that. If we go into our render settings, go to the General tab, and then go to where it says Auto Headlamp, and set that to Never. That thing, I hate that. It's a dirty liar. Every time that's left on, your materials are going to be lying to you, because there's going to be a light shot from your camera onto your figure, and your lighting is always going to be a liar. So turn that crap off. So once I have that set up, then I'll go back into my surfaces. And if I take my material selection tool and I right click, then I can select all surfaces using a given map. So now I'm going to select everything that I know is using that skin map. Okay. And I need to shove my normal map for this in here. So let's just, here's a quick way to navigate to that. I have a ton of different libraries here. If you've watched any of my past videos, you'll see I have ridiculous numbers of libraries. You can see over here all the different products and things that I work on all the time. Just kind of leads me to that. So sometimes navigating through all that stuff can be a little bit of a headache. So here's a little tip, a little trick that I like to use. Since I've converted this from Poser to Daz Studio, and I have its default texture already in place, I can go temporarily plug that into my normal map. So we'll go to the normal map. Then let's just plug that in, and it's going to look like crap, but that's okay, because that's just so that it sits in that channel for a second, and then when I hit browse, it will go to the directory where all those other maps are at. So now I can switch that out for the actual normal map that I need. So, and then for the other maps that I need to plug in, I'm going to use that same little trick so that I'm always navigating to the right place. So if I go to displacement, actually now that I've navigated to that, it should automatically go there. Yeah, there it goes. So let's grab displacement. Let's turn up that displacement strength a little bit. I also want to change this figure. Right now it's just at its base resolution. I want to change its geometry under figure geometry to a subdivision surface. That should give it a little bit more smoothing, and it will make displacement maps work much, much better. So now let's go back to our surfaces. And if we turn up that displacement strength a little bit, we can see its effects. Okay. And then let's go down to, let's let's set angle on all of these materials to 180 degrees because we don't need the hard edges showing up. And the thing that I love about that live iRay preview is that you can edit your materials and see a really accurate representation of them for final rendering right there in the viewport. So let's turn this glossy layered weight down a bit, and then I have a cavity map that I'm going to plug into that. That way I can have some gloss on the high points, but then the recesses will be darker and won't have the gloss flooded into them. And let's see, do I want any translucency on this guy? If I did, I wouldn't want it to be that much. I'm gonna say no. Let's say no to that. Metallicity is fine. Oh, something that I like to do with a creature like this is going to be down here where it says thin walled. If you turn that off, then you open up your subsurface scattering settings. So let's take my transmitted color and make that something warm. And I'm going to turn my SSS amount up a bit and set my direction to a positive value. And there we can see the creature warming up just a touch. So there's a lot of things you can do playing around with your materials and all that. So since this video isn't really a materials related video, I'm going to kind of back off of that aspect of things right now. But I wanted to kind of give you just a little peek into some of what you can do with that, and really just wanted to make sure that you'd seen as part in context of converting a figure from Poser to Daz Studio. I wanted to make sure that I had shown where you could go and quickly convert those 3D Light default materials over to iRay materials. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the basis. That lays the foundation for doing a figure conversion from Poser to Daz Studio. So I hope some of what I've shown you in this video is helpful, and if you enjoy that sort of thing, you're into this stuff, you want to make content, you want a place to release your content where the folks are going to be good to you and really help you out a lot, and you're going to have access to some experienced help. I'm always pretty much on call to help people who have questions or whatever. We have a dedicated Facebook group that I interact with everyone through. There's also dedicated forums on the site. So anyway, if you dig this sort of thing, make sure you check out CG Bytes and check out what they have to offer as far as a place to release your content. And be sure to come back and check with us in January, here in just another week or so, because moving into 2017, we're going to be doing some different things with the Artist Development Program. So till then, I am Les Garner from 6S1 Media and CG Bytes, and I hope you dig the video. Keep making some cool artwork. Thanks.